The indictment against disgraced music mogul Diddy has been unsealed, and the picture that the government is painting about Cassie's ex-boyfriend is beyond damning. Obviously, what I'm about to get into is sensitive, so letting you know. As I told you yesterday and in the past, the federal authorities were investigating Diddy on trafficking violations, amongst others. Crimes, hardcore, intense criminal activity, and that is what he is alleged of. Running a criminal organization. What does that mean? It means that Diddy and his employees used threats, force, financial leverage to take advantage of women. And so many other charges, including gun offenses, narcotics. This is explosive stuff. Let's get into it all. But before I get into it, I want to just take a moment to send my deepest healing to all of Diddy's victims. And I don't have to say alleged. We know there are victims like Cassie. In addition to trafficking, Diddy has also been charged with racketeering, kidnapping, and more. I also expect that some of his employees will be facing charges as well, because the government has laid out how his entire staff helped support him in his criminal activities. According to the federal government, Diddy, quote, engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse toward women and other individuals, including physical violence, in order to fulfill his SE to the X-UAL desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct, according to the indictment. It really goes into detail on everything that he did, including these freak-offs, which were often days-long, drugged-up S to the E to the X parties. Diddy and his associates would wield their power and prestige to intimidate, threaten, and lure women into his orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship, the indictment says. It says he then would use force, threats, and coercion to get the women to engage with male S workers in the freak-offs. Elaborate and produced S to the E to the X performances that Diddy arranged, directed, would engage in pleasuring activities, and often recorded. There is so much evidence, both physical evidence and, I am certain, women that have spoken on the record to the authorities that are prepared to testify against him. Diddy would often arrange to fly the women in and ensured their participation by procuring and providing DRUG to the S, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and using intimidation and violence, according to the indictment. His employees facilitated these freak-off parties by arranging travel, booking hotel rooms where they would take place, and stocking those rooms with supplies including DRUGS, baby oil, lubricants, extra linens, and lighting, scheduling the delivery of IV fluids, and then cleaning the rooms afterwards. As I also previously told you, Diddy's homes in Miami and Los Angeles were raided previously. Earlier this year, law enforcement seized narcotics, more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant, and they even found illegal weapons. 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers were taken in by the government. And I did say narcotics. And this man had minor children living with him. The indictment portrays Diddy as violent, a man who choked and shoved people, hit and kicked victims, and sometimes dragged them by their hair, causing injuries that often took days or weeks to heal. His employees and associates sometimes witnessed his violence and kept victims from leaving or tracked down those who tried, the indictment says. The recordings that I told you about, the indictment claims that Diddy kept videos of his victims engaging in these acts and used the recordings as collateral to ensure the women's continued obedience and silence. He also exerted control over victims by promising career opportunities, providing and threatening to withhold financial support, dictating how they looked, monitoring their health records, and controlling where they lived, according to the indictment. And it gets even worse. Just within the last year alone, the federal authorities claim that Diddy engaged in a hardcore attempt to cover up his criminal behavior. The indictment says that Diddy and his associates pressured victims and witnesses to stay silent, offering bribes and supplying false narratives of what happened, the indictment says. All of this was happening behind the facade of Diddy, the businessman. Yeah, Diddy the Godfather, more like it. As you would imagine, based on the severity of all of these charges, Diddy is facing decades behind bars. His lawyer is maintaining his innocence and, outside of court this morning, shockingly says he will make the case on why Diddy should be released on bail. No. What are your thoughts on everything that I just shared? Let me know in the comments.